Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for the game theory video. Remember, the videos like, sub, delete, comment, share, support the channel if you want to appreciate it. Thanks. Just because I put in Marvel, Miss Marvel, Ultimate Marvel for the first time, and God, has it been probably over 10 years, whatever it was, 10, 12, 13 years, whatever it was since that game came out. And it reminded me back, we're going to talk about why Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was such a terrible game. Normally I just talk about games like Street Fighter Alpha 2. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is so funny because I can look at Street Fighter Alpha 2 and I'm like, this should not be a bad game. It should be a good game, but it's so terribly made. But when we think about other terribly made games, you also have to think about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is a terribly made game. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite doesn't even make sense in theory when you think about it. Like maybe sometimes you're like, wow, that was a good idea. It was a good idea in theory, but when you tried it, it didn't work out. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is just a fucking terrible game all around. But before I get into that, just because I've made some videos about this throughout the years anyway, and especially even when the game came out and I made some videos for the game, I described this sort of like treasure map theory and when I was doing videos for the game and talking about how terrible the game was, basically. But speaking about game design, something that I've never asked the channel, and if you can, put it in the description. Does anyone know, is there a way to find out who was the actual battle designer, battle planner, whatever they call it is, for like every single game? Is that like knowledge available? Like to my knowledge, I think Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 6 were made by a Guilty Gear guy, from what I understand, right? Is that Am I correct in that hearing that? Excuse me. And I remember hearing something like Street Fighter 3. I thought they had a lot of different people were working on different characters. And I think that was even in an interview. And that's why they said the game was such a clusterfuck because there was not like one cohesive idea since they had a bunch of different people working on the game, even like designing the battle mechanics. And even on that subject, I can say it's funny because when Mike Z was making um, Skullgirls, he actually asked me if I wanted to help him test the game, but it didn't interest me. And it's kind of funny to think I have no idea if Skullgirls is even a quotation marks good game. I legitimately have no idea. So put in the comments, do people think Skullgirls is a well designed game battle wise? I actually have no idea. I've never It's literally, it sounds weird because obviously talked to Mike Z and he even offered, he's like, hey, help me test my game if you want. And I was just like, it just doesn't interest me. But he even said, yeah, you could have if you wanted to. But I have heard from people more so in real life that he did some like other kind of, it was like an RPG game or something like that. And maybe it was like I don't know. Somebody said that they actually liked that game and they think it was a good made game. But what I'm getting at is there actually a way to find out who made what games and everything like that? Because it would be interesting if you could see, like, wow, who came up with this mechanic? Whose bright idea was this? This person should never be allowed to make a game again. Do you know what I mean? Don't ever let them make a game again. You are terrible. You know what I mean? Just like Dragon Ball Fighter Z, was that all made by one person? Or did maybe some person like that good idea was theirs, this bad idea was theirs? Never hire the bad person again. Do you know what I mean? But wow, that was a long forward. But whenever I think about Marvel's Capcom Infinite, and the game doesn't even work in theory, it's just such a terrible game. You know, and I'm sure it's been explained exactly what the exact number is, but when I was making those videos, I was like, wow, it's like once you get to around, let's say the treasure map theory, what I talked about is Marvel's Capcom has this weird sort of idea of once you get to around 50% life, whatever it is, you start to reach this point of no return, right? Where the game is like, you have to super here because the guy is going to tech no matter what. They're going to have any excuse they'll tech, basically, right? So 50%, whatever around that, area is when the game is like, fuck you. We're going to make everything is almost immediately techable. And you can even tech supers at some points, right? So saying that, right, the treasure map is how can we get as close to 50% without hitting that threshold of the guy is going to tech everything, and then we super or hopefully do some kind of super that is not techable. Why is this so terrible just even in theory, right? Well, first of all, let's take these two people right here. Let's say we have a pixie character and we have a muscle man character. Let's say at face value, we think this small character probably does less damage in theory, let's say, but they're faster. They have more mix-ups. Maybe they're a fireball character. Maybe they're a lockdown character. Who knows, right? But we would assume for being as fast as they are, they do less damage. For having this potential, maybe lockdown, they do less damage. Now, if we were to look at Muscle Dude over here, we would assume probably at face value that this character might not have as good as lockdown, but they're going to do more damage, right? Well, guess what? This is already thrown out the window of a game like Marvel's Capcom Infinite, because guess what? Both these characters' thresholds for their 50% is the same. Both these characters are going to get 50%, right? And we also have this game had these three little gimmicks. Was you had the wall bounce, the OTG, and was it the ground bounce? It's been a while since I played the game, right? And a lot of times to even reach this treasure map of getting 50%, you don't have to even use each tool, right? Because 50% is such a low threshold. You know what I mean? Like maybe you might be like, oh man, I got to use every tool in my toolbox to get to this treasure map, the treasure chest of 50%. Well, no, you don't. You might just be like, oh, I only need to use my ground bounce gimmick. I only need to use my wall bounce gimmick. I only need to use my OTG. Or maybe I only need to use two. But very rarely, if at all, do you actually have to use all of this? And when you think about homogenizing the game as well, a lot of times you might think of, say, a game like Marvel's Capcom 3, right? Ryu doesn't have OTGs besides Super. Well, that's out the window in a game like Marvel's Capcom Infinite, because guess what? Every character has these versatile options for everything, right? Okay. Right? Now let's look at the stupid fucking gem system of the game, right? It's so stupid, I don't even exactly remember what it is, dude. So I think one of the gems made you do more damage, right? One of the gems, did it bring you back to life if you were dying or some shit like that? I forget. One of the gems gave you like a custom combo mode that made it easier to combo. One of the gems made you do more damage. And then the other gems was one put you in a blue box so you couldn't move, and one did a homing red fireball, right? So guess what? We've already established, since it's so easy to reach the treasure chest, why the fuck would you use a custom combo mode? We don't even need to use the regular tools of the game to get to this magical 50% limit. Why would we use a power gem? We don't need to do any more damage because we're already going to reach the threshold. So guess what happened, right? Most people just use the versatile option of the red homing fireball, or the blue box, because it locked you down, because we can already get to this 50% thing so easily. And then you get to this idea of like, well, fuck, wait a second. What you might think of again at face value, oh, this super stronger character, whatever it is, this slower character, well, guess what? He doesn't do more damage than the pixie characters. He doesn't do more damage than when a character locks you down. So this whole sort of theory, if you will, of, oh, we're going to balance out Marvel by making the damage more equal across the board, right? We're going to make it so it doesn't feel like every character is locking you down. How? What you said makes no sense, even in theory. This is why I said Marvel's Capcom Infinite. It is a fucking absolutely retarded game. Even if someone was like bringing me this game to like say there's a board meeting, if someone were to bring you Marvel's Capcom Infinite and be like, here's the board meeting, here's my idea for the game, if you take 5 minutes to even think about it, you're like, you are fucking retarded. How do you think that this is going to make it so people don't lock you down anymore? Your gem system, you're like, oh, well, these gems are going to be so well balanced. Why would you not use the homing red fireball or the blue box? Are you fucking retarded? You know what I mean? It's like, what? Oh, but we all do 50%. What the fuck? Like, who designed this game? It's absolutely retarded. And I was just thinking of that, playing Marvel's Capcom 3. Just Marvel's Capcom Infinite, it's a terribly made game. And it doesn't even work in theory. You know what I mean? Marvel's Capcom Infinite, like think about it. Just a retard should have been able to see that Marvel's Capcom Infinite is a terribly designed game, even on a theoretical standpoint, let alone playing it. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Maybe if you played it, like, oh, well, when you actually play it, there's this bug in the game where if you do like the power thing, it makes you, the threshold is now 80%, or it can automatically kill you or whatever. Or if you do the custom combo mode, you know what I mean? Or whatever the fuck. It's just, you don't need this shit. It's retarded. So anyway, I was just thinking about that because, you know, obviously, when I think of like badly made games, you know, I obviously think about, and again, people get mad at me. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is a terrible game. I'm sorry. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is a cool game. Like, trust me, I can watch a match of Street Fighter Alpha 2, and before you get meter and custom combos come into play, I'm like, it's a cool but just not good game. And then you start seeing custom combos, and you're like, this is a badly made game. It's a terrible idea of a game. Cool game. Don't get me wrong. You see Street Fighter Alpha 2 and you're like, you know, every game's got their good and bad. But then you see like custom combos and you're like, custom combos are so bad. They are so badly designed, and it's made even worse by, you know, the tone down of supers. So, you know, supers got toned down in Alpha 2, and it's like a head-on collision of badly designed things. Cool looking game though, for sure. I mean, the vibe of Alpha 2, I think the vibe of Alpha 2 is amazing, but, you know, I'll tell you what, let me put this. If you like the vibe of something, I could play Dead or Alive 2. And, you know, actually, I wonder if I would say that Dead or Alive is a better designed game than Street Fighter Alpha 2. I think I might say that. I think Dead or Alive actually gets hate. I think Dead or Alive actually gets hate when it probably shouldn't. But anyway, besides that, Marvel's Capcom Infinite, terrible, terrible fucking made game. The game doesn't even make sense in theory. It's just absolutely retarded. And then, of course, just let's not even think about just not even the game just in theory. Let's just even get into like character specific shit and all this other stuff that's in the game. It's just like badly made game. But besides that, like I said, let me know in the comments is there actually a list of who made games and everything like that? That would be interesting to be like, wow, that guy has a track record of being a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? Excuse me. But maybe that's kind of the norm. There certainly is a lot of really fucking retarded people in the fighting game community who have done jack shit and for some reason are rewarded for it. So, you know, that's definitely a thing, you know, but yeah. And that's not to say Marvel's Capcom 3, you know, Ultimate is the best game ever, but you know, there's definitely things like even just putting the game in again. I forgot. God, man, it's the commands are so lax in the game almost to it's kind of a, you can card cancel so long. The game almost kind of feels like, I mean, I guess my fingers, I don't know. It's a little extreme, but, and there's other things that I don't agree with the game. But when you think of like the jump from Marvel 3 to Marvel's Capcom Infinite, it's just like, whoa, what a terribly made game that I've said for 100 times here. Anyway, remember if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.